You know that famous saying, in the future, everyone will be world famous for 15 minutes? Well, Andy Warhol is the guy who said it. But for Warhol himself, that fame has lasted way, way longer than 15 minutes. He basically became the living, breathing symbol of an entire art movement. So today, we're going to dig into the incredible value behind the king of pop art. $195 million. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's not the price of a Hollywood blockbuster. That's how much one single Andy Warhol painting sold for at Christie's back in 2022. It is, to this day, one of the priciest pieces of 20th century art ever sold. So how on earth does that happen, right? How does a picture of Marilyn Monroe, an image you've probably seen on a million posters and t-shirts, end up with a price tag that high? Well, to figure that out, we've got to understand the man himself and the whole art revolution he kicked off. See, before he was the iconic figure with the white wig hanging out with rock stars and celebrities, Andy Warhol was Andrew Warhola, and his life started a million miles away from the glitz and glamour he would end up defining. He was born in Pittsburgh to Slovakian immigrants. He started his career not in some fancy art gallery, but as a commercial artist in New York, drawing ads for magazines. But then 1962 rolls around and everything changes. He shows his Campbell's soup cans for the first time, and boom, pop art is born. Just 2 years after that, he opens the factory, his studio, which basically became the coolest place on the planet until he died in 1987. Honestly, the best way to get a handle on Warhol's insane impact and those astronomical prices is to just look at his work. So we're going to count down some of his most expensive pieces ever sold, and each one tells a little piece of his story. And we're going to start with one that absolutely shatters that colorful, happy-go-lucky image of pop art. This is Race Riot. It really forces you to look at Warhol's darker, more controversial side, and his obsession with images ripped straight from the headlines. In 2014, 50 years after he made it, this piece sold for almost $63 million. So, what's the big deal? Why is it so important? Well, this is pure Warhol. It's from a whole series he called Death and Disaster. And what he did was he took this incredibly raw photo from Life magazine, a picture of police attacking civil rights protesters, and he just used it. He didn't ask for permission, which actually sparked a lawsuit, but it's a perfect example of his method. Take powerful images from the media and turn them into high art. And this Death and Disaster series was a huge deal for him. He was fascinated by how we as a society almost consume tragedy like entertainment. He'd take these gruesome, shocking images from the news, run them through a silkscreen process, and force you to see them in a totally different light. Take a look at Green Car Crash. It's based on a really graphic photo from a car accident. Now, most of the pieces in this series were black and white. This is the only one he did in this strange, haunting color, which makes it super rare. When it sold for over $71 million in 2007, it completely smashed his old record. But the absolute peak of this whole theme is this monster of a painting. It's called Silver Car Crash Double Disaster. The thing is massive, over 8 feet tall and 13 feet wide, and it just shows this twisted car wreck over and over and over again. And the price tag was just as monumental. In 2013, 5 different people were battling it out at auction before it finally sold for an unbelievable $105 million. For almost a decade, that was the most expensive Warhol ever sold, and it's a picture of one of the bleakest subjects you can imagine. So, car crashes, soup cans, portraits of movie stars, how does it all fit together? It's all part of pop art. This was the whole movement Warhol led. It challenged what art was supposed to be. The idea was that images from our everyday lives, a tragic news photo, a can of soup, a company logo, were just as worthy of being on a museum wall as anything else. And, no single piece asks that question better than his Brillo box sculptures. I mean, they look exactly like the cardboard boxes of soap pads you'd see stacked up in a grocery store. So, is it a priceless sculpture, or is it something you'd put your coffee mug on? This story is just incredible, and it shows you how much things have changed. Back in 1969, a family actually bought one of these for $1,000, and I kid you not, they used it as a coffee table. Their daughter even has pictures of herself as a baby sitting on top of it. Then, fast forward a few decades, and a nearly identical Brillo box sells for over $3 million. Okay, but beyond the car crashes and the soapboxes, there were 2 subjects that really launched Warhol into the stratosphere: common groceries and Hollywood legends.
These are the images that turned him into a household name.
It's almost funny to think about now, but his camel soup cans had a wild ride. When they first came out in '62, a lot of critics just laughed at them. The gallery owner actually had to buy the entire set of 32 paintings himself for just $1,000. Fast forward to 2006, and just one of those canvases sold for almost $12 million. Talk about a good investment.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to the #1 most expensive, most famous, and most Warhol piece of them all, Shot Sage Blue Maryland. It is the perfect storm of everything he was obsessed with: celebrity, beauty, color, and of course, tragedy. $195 million, a price that didn't just break his own record, it pretty much cemented his spot in the Art History Hall of Fame forever.
And the story behind its name just adds to the legend. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. In 1964, a performance artist walks into the factory, sees a stack of 4 of these Maryland paintings, pulls out a pistol, and shoots a bullet clean through them. The paintings were repaired, but the story gave them this infamous new name, the Shot Marylands. That bizarre, violent act literally became part of their history and part of their value. So when you look at these prices, you're not just seeing the value of some paint on a canvas. You're looking at the price tag of a cultural revolution that we are still living in today. Warhol didn't just create art, he changed the rules of the entire game. He completely blurred the lines between high art and pop culture, between a museum and a supermarket. He turned the artist into a brand, into a celebrity in their own right. And his images of soup cans, movie stars, car crashes are now as recognizable as the Nike swoosh or the Coca-Cola logo. I mean, it really is that simple, isn't it? When someone says pop art, you think Andy Warhol. He wasn't just part of the movement, he was the movement. And his work still defines how we think about art, fame, and culture today.
So which was he? A genius holding a mirror up to our weird obsessions with fame and consumerism? Or was he the ultimate marketer, just brilliantly packaging our own culture and selling it back to us? His art never really gives you a straight answer. And maybe that's why it's still so powerful, still so fascinating, and still asking all of us that one big question: what is fame really worth?